Unleash the power of purpose with impactful business voices, hosted by Nancy Backey and Anita Larson. Each week, you'll be inspired by stories from companies that are making a real difference in the world, and you'll learn practical tips on how to grow your business with an impact.
Hey, everybody. Another Tuesday. Thank you for listening to the Impactful Business Voices podcast, where every week, Anita and I, we talk to business owners that make an impact in the world, in their communities, and in the lives of their clients as well. So we are here to always find out what drives them, and really in hoping that, that it inspires you to make an impact in your business, in the world, and maybe in your own business as well, that'll impact the rest of the world. So we're your hosts. I'm Nancy Backey.
I'm Anita Larson, and thanks for being here. Today, it's a pleasure for us to have Cindy Brockway on the show. She is a long-time educator, and she's now committed to tackling the exhaustion epidemic that's affecting all of us, really, high-achieving adults in both our personal and professional lives. So Cindy helps by providing practical strategies to manage stress, kind of helping you maintain your momentum and avoid burnout. So let's just dive right in and find out what she knows and what she can teach us. So welcome, Cindy.
Hello.
Welcome, Cindy. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you.
We are really, really honored and excited to have you here today, Cindy. Thank you for coming on. Listen, I mean, we have so much that we'd like to learn about you, introduce you to our listeners. So we like to always start off by learning more about how you make an impact in the world. And maybe you can describe your, we hear you as a courage coach. Can you just maybe define for our audience what that really means and what impact are you actually making in the lives of your clients today?
Well, thank you. Yes, I call myself a courage coach because it takes courage for us to be able to break out of the mindsets that we have had for all our years. From our society, from our workplace, from our family and our roles. So it takes courage. And I'm an educator. I have been an educator working with children with special needs for over 30 years, working with their parents, working with their service providers, working in the private sector as well to just support people of differing abilities and to give them the tools they need to be courageous and confident in what they do, regardless of their responsibilities, regardless of how old we are, being able to just get out there, be courageous, be confident, and have what it takes to kind of put the brakes on when it's necessary. And I feel like the more independent you get, the more growth you make, the more you need to be mindful of those brakes that you need to activate in order to keep yourself from burning out or from becoming chronically exhausted.
We do forget to put that. Yeah, we forget to put that pedal down and that brake and say, okay, let's just put that brake on in life. So yes.
Yeah, and we're real good at putting the pedal to the metal, and speeding through. Yeah, but we're not as good at putting the brakes on when we need to. We almost sometimes, I think, feel guilty when we need to put the brakes on, or we feel like there's something wrong, or we're not doing, what we need to be doing. But that's not true. That's a myth.
So with your 30 years as an educator, what brought you from that to being a courage coach? Like, what's the journey that brought you to where you are today? How did that happen?
Right. Well, it happened probably in 2020, or actually even before that, when I started to wind down and find out that I was putting the pedal to the metal too much. And I was not well. I was stressed. I was actually on medical leave for about 3 months, trying to pull my life back together in my 50s. And I said, you know what? This isn't going to continue. So I needed to decide how to still make an impact on the world while taking care of myself. And so first I learned how to take care of myself. I cut my business hours at work. I put the brakes on some things that were happening that were kind of unfair and unreasonable. And it just went from there. Then when COVID hit, it kind of made a big impact on everybody. And at that time, I was working for a small charter school. Their funding was slashed dramatically when you came to in-person events. And so I started creating my online virtual business center and took all my mentoring and coaching that I did as an educator for all these years and decided to put it in a virtual format so that I could reach, on a more global level, people just like me that are high achieving individuals that really need to get a more realistic look at what's going on in our personal lives and our own physical and emotional well-being.
It's funny because actually that's kind of similar to my story, because I did have a burnout, and that's what led me to move into starting my own business and
yes,
pushing myself too hard and stressing about not meeting expectations in the business world, if you will, as an employee. And that's why I decided I needed to start my own business and have that freedom to take control over my own time and finances and the quality of life with my family. So
yes,
I completely relate to your story.
And, it all comes about because we are living under a lot of stress, especially when you're working for someone else, particularly for myself, people that work for the state, Department of Public Instruction, or, a nursing facility or whatever. You're exposed to prolonged high stress levels, and it really takes its toll, but it sneaks in there. And, you're feeling exhausted, depleted, maybe even you're mentally distant. And we say, you're having like a foggy day or whatever, but it builds up. And over time, you're just not as efficient as you were. You start having these health issues, and really something needs to be done. Otherwise, your body's going to do it for you. And I've heard that so many times that it took a health crisis, physical or mental health crisis, for someone to slow down. And hey, we're brilliant individuals, but I think that's what catches us up sometimes, because we feel like we can be everything to everybody. And it can take over and it gets a life of its own, that stress does, and we're stuck.
And yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Cindy.
Well, I was just going to say, unless we make a major shift.
100%. And I think also this pandemic, I've been saying this a lot. The pandemic has also pushed us to do this as well. Like we come in, we were not as, I'm not going to say us anyways, but the regular humans that have a job, that go to their 9-to-5ers, they come in, they're just living the life. Then for 2 years, they couldn't work. Well, almost anyways.
Yes.
And then they found themselves more busy. And look, now you call it, what we hear you say, the exhaustion epidemic, which
yes.
I even though that word haunts me and I get chills when I say it, but it's a perfect description of the way of what's going on right now.
Well, and COVID, I think, has a big impact on it. And there's even lots of statistics out there on the post-COVID stress and exhaustion epidemic, because a lot of things changed during COVID. And you probably know, each one of you, when you go out into public to go shopping, to go to get your hair done, to go to get groceries, how many people in restaurants, how many people say they are slow because we don't have enough help?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
You know,
yeah. I mean,
a
with what we
lot of
do, we hear it
things.
all the time.
Exactly. The pandemic has really squashed a lot of productivity, and people are just extremely exhausted now because they're taking on the job of many people, and they're trying to do their best, and they're getting burnout in quicker rates now.
So is this why, Cindy, you've decided to put your focus, your mission is really focusing on the exhaustion epidemic? Is this why you've decided to do this?
I believe so. Absolutely. And, for myself, the exhaustion epidemic as an educator, and I can't speak for a lot of other fields, but I know from facts, but I know from other people. When you think about it right now, just take a few minutes to think about and put a face on stress, burnout, exhaustion. Who do you know that is in that place? So put a face on it. Is it a parent? Is it your friend? Is it, the lady that does your hair? It's just a task for us to really take a look at how this exhaustion is overwhelming so many different people, and you could probably name several people right now who
Mm-hmm.
are on the verge of burnout. And that puts a face to it. So it's not just, being a generic, I'm burned out, I'm stressed. No, think of some people who are really struggling, who are really emotionally and mentally drained and exhausted. And it makes it more real. Even if we are in a place right now where we feel like we have a handle on it, think about when you weren't. Bring that back to mind, because we can get back there at any time if we don't stay vigilant. And so, yes, I have absolutely taken this on because I'd say probably the last half of my career as an educator, I spent in severe exhaustion, and so did everyone else in the building. And we need to put a stop to it. There's really a few simple shifts that we can make in our thinking and in our responses to things that can make a major impact on how we view stress, how we deal with stress.
Yeah, absolutely. Anita, are you there? Or I see you. Okay. So I think she's frozen for a second. So let me come in. So
sorry.
No, you're back? Okay, good.
Yes,
Go
I'm
for it.
back. I'm sorry, my internet went out for a second.
Yeah, you're good.
I wanted to mention Nathan's watching today.
Yeah,
so
I know. I just noticed.
to see you, Nathan. And he says sometimes we don't see how much unhealthy exhaustion we have until we leave a work situation. I loved the job and thought I was living my best life at the time. And when I left, it was immediately apparent how burnt out I was. And I had to admit that what others in my life have been telling me have been true.
Yeah.
And that is such a great point. Sometimes you're just in it and you're just going, and you don't realize how much you put into it, and you put too much into it. And then when you get out, you realize how you were just exhausted to the bone, really. And it's such a great point.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. And I think that is true of so many people. And we kind of dismiss a lot of the symptoms as we're going through because we say we're busy. But when you are in the midst of that mental and physical and sometimes even spiritual burnout, really most of your energy and your focus is on daily survival. And you don't have time to figure out what's going on or to analyze your situation or even think about what's going to happen in the future. You're just kind of stuck in survival mode and you push, and that's what happens. And I think COVID did that to a lot of people. When everything slowed down, we realized how stressed and how much angst that we were carrying on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So you talked about, Cindy, how you did this because of your own stress and exhaustion. That's why you decided to get into this. So going through that yourself, how has that kind of shaped and set you up for your approach that you have with your clients?
Well, for one thing, I've been there. I think many of us have been there. But when you're in the field of education and you are responsible for working with other people in the field, with parents, with service providers, you get a lot of experience in helping people kind of problem solve, especially in the field of special education, which is where I specialize. I was an exceptional needs specialist, and I worked with so many people who not only had to deal with their own stressors at work, but they also had to deal with stressors that were put on them that a lot of people don't typically have, which is a special needs child, and all of their appointments and, their therapies and things like that. And it's a combination of all those things, I think, that that inspire me to be able to reach out and support others, because I have seen it from several different mindsets, really, being able to work with people in the school setting, in their home setting, at conferences when you hold sessions for teachers or for, physical therapists or OTs, and you talk about this subject and you realize, man, it is everywhere. Yeah. And I just feel like I have really honed it in, and I focus now specifically on us high achievers, because I know we are the ones that make the most excuses for not taking care of ourselves, because we don't want to let anybody down.
That's such an important point that you said, and it makes people like us say you're right. But yeah, no, and that sentence really pushes us to just realize that don't forget.
Yes.
Don't forget. Thank you for sharing that. I hear a little bit, about decompression. And I know there's a lot of people don't even understand what decompression is. So we want to kind of know like, why do you focus on decompression and wholeness? And maybe you can kind of bring in a little definition for our listeners to understand it a little bit better.
Yes, that is a great question. And really, when we are in a state of burnout, we are experiencing significant mental, physical, and sometimes even spiritual symptoms that take our mind off of our desire to learn and grow. Like I said, we're back into survival mode. And so when we are not exploring the benefits of taking care of ourselves and our professional well-being, we are just surviving. And there's a lot of factors that impact our ability to survive, to be in survival mode, and a lot of it we just expect because we know and have been in the field for a long time. And we know that it's just expected of us. Expectations, other people's expectations. And I know that, Anita, you mentioned that being under the umbrella of other people's expectations was just stifling. And so, but not everyone can or want to start their own business, but everyone can learn how to decompress more effectively. Not just waiting for that annual vacation to get a break or to get away from it all, not waiting for the weekend to try to catch up on this, and but being able to put all of these things that we know about taking ourselves, all of these little intentional action steps, and really tangible things, tangible strategies, so that we can learn how to recharge and replenish ourselves regularly, even several times a day. so that we can truly say that we are living in a state of flow, and we don't often think of it that way. We don't often feel like we were in a state of flow where we're sort of balancing what we're doing, what we're putting out with what we're taking in. And that's what I mean by decompressing, learning how to just put on the brakes.
Take a breath.
Regularly. Take a
Yeah.
breath.
And
Regularly,
like I say always,
consistently.
we always want to not forget to work to live and not live to work like a lot of us do.
Yes, I was listening to one of your other podcasts and I did hear that and I thought exactly. But, our society, that's what they expect. They don't focus on replenishing and recharging. They focus on productivity and performance.
Yes.
I agree so much with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, even in schools, it's on a different level, but we focus on performance and productivity. We don't focus on the process. Well, fortunately for me, being in special education, I had the opportunity to really hone in on the process with my kids because I had to, in order for them to be able to show what they know when they can't speak or they can't walk or they can't hold a pencil to take the test. Yep. So there are so many ways that we can accomplish what needs to be accomplished in our lives without burning ourselves out. But we just need to be able to recognize it and get a little bit of help in figuring out how to move forward in a way that is self-supporting.
I think it's so true what you said about our society. And I think also the culture here in the United States, the work culture, I feel like it's starting to change with the pandemic. There has been changes, but I believe that it's always been almost a pride of, I haven't taken a vacation day in like 3 years. And it's almost like a source of pride, which it shouldn't be, and now I feel like after the pandemic, people are putting more focus on the quality of life instead of just burning themselves out. But it's definitely been the work culture.
Yeah. And you're right. Some are. And because we are, I think because we are in the online realm, we see a lot more of the terminology like self-care and putting yourself first and all that stuff. But there are still plenty of people out there who really have a misconception of what self-care is, or they feel like that it doesn't apply to them. And so there's still plenty of work to be done in this area. And we know by experiencing when we go into a restaurant or somewhere and the employees are just stressed and they're not smiling and whatever, grocery stores, department stores, there's a lot of stress going on still, because like I said, now the workplace is where you're trying to make up for people that aren't there because you don't have enough help or you don't have enough funding or you don't have enough hours in a day. So it's still pretty prevalent, even though I do feel there's a shift. Absolutely.
So can you share a story with about someone you worked with and how you helped them with their stress management and dealing with exhaustion?
Yes. Well, I think the first thing that I like to do with people, with my clients, is to give them like time to really just focus on a few key steps daily that helps them to realize that they don't often take the time. I put a few limitations on them at the beginning, or at least I encourage them to limit a few things, to get up in the morning and drink water first thing in the morning, to kind of rehydrate their body, to do a few of the self self-care activities that I share with my clients before they turn their phone on. And, it's interesting because I've had clients say, that was hard. Because they're so used to getting up, pulling the phone up, taking a look at it, checking their email and everything, especially if they know they have to be to work or there's a big meeting today or whatever, to be able to even take a few minutes in the morning for yourself to do a couple of things, use a few of these relaxation modalities before you pick up your phone. And so that's an eye opener. And another thing I think that makes the biggest impact with my clients is when they start consistently using these frameworks to kind of explore the benefits of self-care and how it impacts them personally and professionally. They realize how much of the decisions that they make throughout the day are based on expectations of other people, which is something that we've already mentioned. And knowing that you still can do what you need to do for your job or for your business or for your family or for those that you take care of, but come at it more creatively and in a way that you've already determined when you start following some of these frameworks, in a way that is self-supporting. You're still doing the same things, but you're doing it in a way and from a mindset that is a whole lot different than it was when we first started. It's really digging in deep to society, finding out why it is that I think all these things, these myths about, decompression and self-care. Why do I think that, I don't need that too? And that's kind of the stories that I get from my clients, knowing and finding out that the world didn't fall apart when they didn't wake up and get on the phone immediately. Knowing that when they got to work for that meeting that they felt like was, going to be out of control, they were in a much better frame of mind when they got there than they typically would be when they started first thing in the morning stressing out about who was going to be there and what was going to be said and how they were going to manage it. You get your anchor set first thing in the morning.
And it's a complete whole mind shift. Right? Like they're now not just following the world and they're taking care of them. And I say that as, some people, they wake up in the morning watching the news. Oh my goodness, I go nuts. I would go nuts. I want to hear the world as soon as I wake up. Like seriously. So thank you for that. That was awesome. In the last few years, you have really learned so much through other people and through the years of 20, 30 years of what you're doing. What has been your biggest surprise during this long journey into entrepreneurship?
Okay, so if we're talking about the entrepreneurship part, I think the biggest surprise is how difficult it can be and how easy it can be. It's like a paradox. If you have the right tools, it can be fairly easy. And I don't mean I guess fairly easy, not necessarily simple, but fairly easy. But it can also be overwhelming depending on how you look at it. As an entrepreneur, I started out actually in 2010 with an Etsy shop. So I've had a few different streams of income over the years. I have an Etsy shop. I had a vacation rental for about 10 years. And I have my coaching and I had my full-time career. So I was already edging in with some of that stuff. And it was easy in a way, but getting started was hard. And that's the same way when you talk about self-care and dealing with your exhaustion. It seems like it's going to be really hard, but once you get started, and if you have the right tools and you have a support system, it's easier than you think.
Yeah.
And when we first got on here, you two, and you have someone else that helps you orchestrate everything, and you said I couldn't do it without them, you're right.
Oh yes.
We're not meant to do everything in isolation. So why should we get so tired that we end up in bed? You know, start pooling your resources with other people and figure out how easy it is to work together to solve our problems.
Delegation is key, my friend. That is what we do. If we don't do that, definitely we'll be part of that exhaustion epidemic.
Exactly. And you know what?
I think we said that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we said that a few times on the podcast, that don't try to do it all yourself. It's key for any business owner, I think, and especially any entrepreneur. And we have another comment.
And you know what? Yeah. It's key as a parent.
Oh, absolutely.
As a spouse, as a friend, to be able to be comfortable with delegating, sharing, asking for help.
Yeah. And we have a great tip from Nathan here, which I love that story. He says they did an offsite for the entire company for 3 days and banned the day-to-day work just to demonstrate that a lot of what we were doing was not critically needed or even that impactful. And it transformed their priorities to what they needed to do, because so much of our performance is wasted on less impactful tasks. So true. Thank you for that, Nathan. That's amazing.
Yes, Nathan. I wish more people would do that. And, you know, in the field of special education, we often do something similar where we let people that do not have special needs experience what it's like to have special needs, to be blind, to not hear, to have a lot of issues. And when they step in their shoes, even though we're just kind of simulating it, it makes them realize, you know what? You know, it could be a lot worse. So, yeah, we just have to have more empathy, I think, not only for people around us, but for ourselves.
Yeah. Don't be too hard on ourselves.
Oh, yes, Cindy. And Cindy, that's a really important point, because we seem to do it for everybody else, but we forget us.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, great point.
I know. And somebody the other day,
Oh, we lost her?
Yeah, I think Cindy cut out for a second. Let's see if we can get her back. There she is.
Hello.
Back? Yeah,
there you are.
Everybody went to these black swirls. I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah, that's how my internet's been today.
Yeah, just start that sentence over if that's okay, Cindy.
Yeah, what was I saying? I don't even know what I was saying. I kind of got wacky on that, but
that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you gave us some great tips when you talked about how you work with your clients. Are there any additional, like, specific tips that you can kind of leave our audience with to help those who are listening or watching right now who are struggling with exhaustion, that they're just simply trying to do too much? And then how do they take control of it and just be happy again and bring that life to what it should be?
Right. I think there are a few key tips here when it comes to finding strategies for inspiration and to maintain or rebuild your creativity. It goes back to making sure you have access to a few easy to follow frameworks for yourself. You know, a framework that you utilize for prioritizing your self-care in your daily routines, not just on vacations. A framework for setting boundaries and managing expectations from others and yourself. We sometimes put really high expectations on ourselves, and we realize that it's not coming necessarily from those above. You know, it's coming from within. Another framework that I think is very important is building resilience and coping mechanisms. And all of these are to be done proactively. And it's really just taking a creative and effective approach to dealing with all of these circumstances that lead to burnout. There's not one quick fix. There's so many different facets to it, but it starts with one step at a time. And that's kind of what I would like to leave with people, is figuring out what frameworks are going to help you deal with the unfortunate treatment that you might get at work, with the unmanageable workloads at school or with your family or in the workplace or as an entrepreneur. And even frameworks for kind of clearing up that communication gaps when it comes to the people you work for, or, you know, your family members and things, and just really figuring out what you're going to do in order to get that social support that you need, whether it's personally or professionally.
Cindy, this has been really great. You know, it is a topic that many don't want to hear, but we're in it. And I find for many, it's getting worse and worse for exactly what you just said. It's that one step at a time. And maybe it's that procrastination that they're like, oh my God, I got to do 10 things. Just start with that one step, that one strategy, that one thing that you're going to make a change today, so to have a better tomorrow. So we appreciate you here.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you. Any last thing that you want to mention to us before we put you back on stage, and we'll come and join you in a few minutes?
I don't know. Let's see. I think really some of the key takeaways from today, realizing that burnout is prevalent and it's impactful, and it happens before you know it.
Yes.
And so just understand that self-care is crucial in preventing and managing burnout. And there are sustainable approaches to help you get over that bridge.
Yeah.
And, you know, seek help. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Awesome, Cindy. Thank you again. We're going to put you back on stage. We're going to come and join you in a few minutes, and we'll be there.
Cindy. That was a great conversation with Cindy, and I definitely have a couple of takeaways that I want to touch on before we wrap up. I think one thing that stood out to me is something that seems to be almost a recurring theme in our podcast episodes, regardless of who we speak to: self-care. Like we need more self-care. It comes up in so many different conversations, and 100%. It's just something that I think it's great that it's becoming a topic of discussion. Like people are talking about it, they're bringing it up, they're realizing the importance of it. And people just need to start taking care of themselves. And that includes you and I, Nancy.
100%.
Everybody else.
100%. No, 100%. And she said it, you know, we got to put the brakes on, not when we think we need it, like every day. You know, we have to realize that we have to take those actions and do that. And actually, I've been doing that more and more, and it feels so great. I just wish I could have done, like, I wish I started a long time ago. But we only realize it when we're in it sometimes, and when we're falling, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And she talked a little bit about the decompression, about the burnout. I mean, I personally think, I mean, the pandemic, you know, it was the good, the bad, and the ugly that happened, right? But there's a lot of good that happened during the pandemic. And there was a lot of, I call them realizations, you know, where, you know, sometimes we realize that we were in survival mode before, right? And that we're not alone. So we have to learn how to decompress and not just wait, like she said, not wait for that vacation or for that weekend. It's really every single day that we've got to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And another thing that came up, and Cindy mentioned a little bit towards the end of our conversation here, is boundaries. So we're talking about, and you and I hear this all the time, how companies are short on employees, high turnover, not getting the right candidates. I mean, the bottom line is that people are being more selective with who they work for, how they work, what they're willing to do. And I think it is important for any employee, and of course, if you work for yourself and you have your own company as well, but for any employee that works for a company, that they set boundaries and they set expectations, and they don't jump through every hoop that's set in front of them. There needs to be a quality of life, and this is the time where you can set those boundaries, because the workplace is changing.
Oh, yes.
And companies need to realize that. So if you're a small business owner and you have employees, you need to realize that. You need to let your employees set boundaries and have those expectation conversations with them to make sure they will stay with you long term. And that's going to, only make your company better if you create a loyal employee base and create a good culture of caring within the company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She said something that I really liked, those words that she used. She said, a lot of us don't think about the process. We're looking at that performance and productivity, and we're just aligning ourselves with that. But the process of that replenishing and that recharge, which is really at the base of everything that she said, is that part that we need to really look at for our self-care on a regular daily basis, right? Not just on that weekend or that. So no, I love that. I mean, again, I think that importance that she pushed, and I think we're just repeating the over and over, that importance of every day when we're taking care of ourselves, that little thing of drinking water when we wake up, before we turn on the phone and say, oh my God, what's our day like? Oh my God, what is our, when's our breaks, et cetera, et cetera. And not to forget to do that relaxation and have those modalities on a regular, like I trained myself now in the last few years. I take a 15-minute break between every call. Why? Because if I don't, then I'm going to go into that exhaustion that I don't really want to go through anymore. Right. Yeah. I did notice, like she said, and it's just the confirmation that once we get into it, it just gets easier. Right. And we're enjoying it. So, I mean, there's a lot of takeaways that we were able to get today. Lots of them.
I mean, the bottom line is we need to recognize we're human. Our employees are human. We're not just brains, we're bodies. We need to function, and we need to take care of our mind and our bodies to be able to continue functioning. We can't just go nonstop. So,
and like she said, it's not one quick fix. It's one step at a time. So just take that one first action and start with step one. So guys, this has been really good. Make sure that you keep in touch with Anita and I to learn what else is going on, what opportunities for additional information that we can learn from you, that you can learn from us. This is about community and togetherness. So don't miss out on any of our future episodes. You can definitely find a copy of our recording of this episode and all of the others on our YouTube channel at Impactful Business Voices. And we just ask you, please support us. Click on the subscribe button so that you get notified every time that we have a podcast every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific.
And don't forget to join us again next Tuesday. We are here again, and we'll be speaking with Cheryl Cattell. Cheryl is an amazing, impressive woman. She is an author, speaker, life coach, mental health coach, prayer practitioner, educator, and just a great human being. And she's going to share insights and tips about how to transform adversity or crisis into growth opportunities. So make sure to join us.
Guys, until next week, go make an impact.
Thank you for listening to Impactful Business Voices. Subscribe now and don't miss an episode.